Right now, I'm going to share some terrifying cemetery stories that prove these places hold more than just memories. Like the one you're about to hear, where a group of friends comes across something strange rising out of the ground on a night already filled with fear. But before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of our scary stories. And let me know in the comments what city or country you're watching from. We never should have gone there, but you know how it is. When one person says, "Let's do it," nobody wants to be the coward who backs out. It was a Friday night, and the plan was simple. Grab some flashlights, meet up in the old Death's Hollow Cemetery. Just the name alone sent chills down your spine. And swap ghost stories between the crumbling headstones. It was supposed to be just another dumb teenage dare, a way to prove we weren't scared of anything. The cemetery sat on the outskirts of a forgotten Romanian village, the kind of place time left behind. Stone buildings, gnarled dead trees, and an iron gate that groaned like it was alive, even when there wasn't a breath of wind. Stepping through that gate felt wrong, like the air itself was heavier inside. A weight in the chest, like the place didn't want us there. We settled near an abandoned mausoleum, where the grass had grown wild over half-buried graves. Derek had brought some candles, so we lit them. Partly for the vibe, partly to push back against the suffocating dark. The stories started. One worse than the last, all generic monsters and predictable ghosts. But nobody was really listening. We were too busy fighting this creeping feeling, like something was watching us. That classic sensation of eyes on your back. But when you turn, there's nothing there. Then Jake, who'd been facing away from a row of old graves, suddenly stopped mid-story. His flashlight trembled in his hand as he stared into the dark. We followed his gaze. For a few seconds, nothing. Then, something moved. A figure. At first it looked like just a shadow, but it rose from the ground, slow, like it was being pulled up from the grave itself. The movement was all wrong. Not someone standing, more like something being yanked out. Its arms hung limp at its sides, its head lolled to one shoulder, knees bending the wrong way. The way it moved wasn't human. It was like a broken marionette trying to walk. My blood turned to ice, nobody screamed. We just froze, all of us, trying to decide if this was real or some trick of the light. The thing took a few more steps, dragging one foot, then turned its head toward us. That's when the panic hit. Ryan bolted first, then Derek, then me, then Mia. We stumbled over stones, not looking back, sprinting through the cemetery gates like something was about to grab us at any second. Once we hit the dirt road outside, nobody spoke for a long time, just ragged breathing. Jake was pale, sweating, shaking so hard he could barely hold his flashlight. We got him home, and over the next few days he got worse. Fever, vomiting, nightmares. His mom said it was just some virus, but you could see in his eyes it was more than that. He wouldn't eat, barely talked, just muttered sometimes about its eyes still being there. At first, we told ourselves it was coincidence, a scare, then a bad flu. But something about that night stuck with us. None of us could forget the way that thing had clawed its way out of the ground, or how it had turned straight toward us. That wasn't a prank. That wasn't a person. It was something older, like the grief of that place had taken shape. A week later, Ryan came back with a weird discovery. He'd gone back to the cemetery, of course he had because he's an idiot, and found an old man sitting by a grave. Ryan said the guy looked like part of the scenery. Pale skin, dusty black clothes, a distant stare. He talked to himself, sometimes cried. The name on the headstone was Elena Vasilescu. Ryan asked if the man needed help, and all he said was, "She comes back to me every night. You saw her too, didn't you?" That's when the story stopped being just another campfire tale, because that man was real. He lived in a shack behind the cemetery, sleeping next to his wife's grave. The older villagers said he'd never accepted her death. At the funeral, he'd tried to open the casket. They'd had to drag him away. But what haunted me wasn't just the man, it was the way that thing had moved. The wrong joints, the unnatural angles. It wasn't him. It was something that broke the rules of a human body. Like grief had torn a hole between the living and what should have stayed buried. And the strangest part? It wasn't just fear we'd felt. Underneath the terror, there was this deep, crushing sadness. Like his pain was so old, so heavy, it had soaked into the earth itself. That was only the first part of the night that changed everything. To this day, when I close my eyes, I still see that silhouette rising from the dirt. That wasn't just a scare. It was something supernatural, and it marked all of us forever. After that, we never set foot in that cemetery again. Not for dares, not for anything. Jake was sick for weeks. When he finally got better, he wasn't the same. Quiet, withdrawn, like part of him was still trapped in that night. He stopped hanging out, disappeared from social media, and if anyone brought up what happened, he'd shut down or change the subject. It was like something had taken a piece of him. I tried to move on, but some nights I'd wake up gasping, that same feeling from the cemetery washing over me, like something was watching from the darkness. No one was there, of course, but the energy was the same. That heavy, suffocating presence, like I'd never really left, like it had come back with me. A month later, I worked up the nerve to go back. Alone. I needed to understand. The memory of that night wouldn't let go, and somehow I felt like I had to see that man again. See him clearly without the panic clouding everything. I arrived at dusk, the sun sinking behind the hills. The wind was cold, carrying that smell of damp earth and dead leaves, a smell I knew too well now. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. It didn't take long to find Elena's grave. The headstone was old, surrounded by wilted flowers and melted candle wax. And there he was, sitting on the ground, back against the stone, head bowed. There was something in his face that stopped me cold. Not madness, grief, the kind that carves itself into your bones. He noticed me but didn't startle, just lifted his eyes and said, voice rough, "You came back." I nodded, not knowing what to say. He stood slowly, his body hunched and pointed at the grave. She was my wife. 42 years. She was everything I had. I stayed silent. There was nothing to say. I just listened. When she died, I tried to accept it. I swear I did. But every night here, every candle I lit, I felt her close. And one day, she came back. Not like before, but like you saw. My stomach twisted. He wasn't trying to scare me. There was no performance. Just an old man hollowed out by loss, clinging to anything that felt like the love he'd lost. But what he called coming back, what we'd seen, that wasn't peace. It was pain. Like his sorrow had warped her into something broken, a spirit caught between what was and what should have stayed gone. Sometimes, he went on, she stands up, walks around, looks at me, but she never speaks. I think she hates me for letting her go. A shiver ran up my spine. I tried to stay calm, but the memory of that figure dragging itself forward flashed in my mind. The way it moved, like every bone was in the wrong place. "That wasn't her, sir," I said, forcing my voice steady. "That thing, it was something else." He smiled, a sad, tired smile, like he'd heard this before but chose not to believe it. True love changes the rules, of life and of death. I stayed a few more minutes, but I couldn't find the words. When I left, he just sank back down beside the grave, staring at the horizon with a longing so deep it hurt to see. In the days that followed, it wasn't the thing rising from the earth that stayed with me. It was him, alone, curled up beside his wife's grave. That image hit differently. It wasn't about fear anymore. It was about what absence can do to a person, the kind of emptiness that, if you let it, consumes everything, even what should have been left behind. And no matter how much I told myself what we'd seen was just extreme grief given form, something still didn't add up. The way that thing moved, it wasn't natural. It was like the cemetery itself had absorbed his despair and shaped it into something tangible. Now when I'm in places too quiet, I feel that same weight in the air. that negative energy that seems to come from nowhere. Sometimes I tell myself it's just memory. Other times, I wonder if, maybe, some sorrows are so strong they take on flesh, and the line between presence and echo is thinner than we think. The whole experience left a wound that doesn't heal, not from fear, but from compassion. I learned that grief, when it has no outlet, can become an echo that never stops whispering. And sometimes, that echo is loud enough to wake the dead. Creepy, right? What did you think of that story? From 0 to 10, how would you rate it? Drop your thoughts down below. It's chilling to realize that even a simple hangout with friends can turn into something unexplainable inside a cemetery. But the next story shows how just walking through one of these places can spiral into a chaotic night full of shocking surprises. That night started as boring as they come. Cold pizza, ice-cold beer, and some random rerun playing on TV. Me and my girlfriend Jess were sprawled out on the couch, laughing our asses off at some dumb joke, when she checked her phone and said, "Dude, it's past midnight." We lived about a 15-minute drive away, but since the night was nice, we decided to walk home. Here's the catch. The shortest route cut straight through Clearwater Cemetery. You know, the one with that creepy reputation since the 60s. I cracked a joke. Want to save 10 minutes and end up in a urban legend? Jess just laughed and called me a scaredy cat. By the time we hit the cemetery gates, the streetlights had that weird yellowish glow, and the shadows from the trees were moving, like they were alive. The gate was locked, obviously, but a little shove and a quick climb over the fence should have done the trick. Should have. I went to swing my leg over, slipped, and ate dirt on the other side. Jess lost it laughing, but my knee was scraped raw, and the embarrassment stung worse than the fall. I got up wobbling, and that's when I felt it. You ever notice how the air gets heavy all of a sudden? Like something's just there, watching. No sound, no smell, just this presence. I tried to laugh it off, but my stomach twisted like my body knew something my brain didn't. We kept walking, weaving between the graves. Jess was ahead, her phone light cutting through the dark. The trees arched over the dirt path, and every step made the ground creak, loud like it was amplifying on purpose. Then I saw them. Between two mausoleums, two figures. Couldn't tell if they were men, women, or what. They were just standing there, side by side, motionless. And the worst part, they were facing me, like they'd been waiting. My whole body locked up. I blinked hard, thinking maybe it was locals or some messed up art installation. But they didn't move, not a twitch, just that stare. Jess was already further ahead, clueless. When I tried to call her, my voice came out all weak. Then one of them let out this sound, a dry, guttural scream, like it was being ripped out of its chest. The other answered, but it wasn't a conversation, more like an animal responding. And just like that, they bolted in the opposite direction, vanishing between the graves like smoke in the fog rolling in. I froze. Jess ran back, asking what the hell happened. I told her, but my voice was shaking. She swore she didn't see anything, just heard me yell. We tried to laugh it off, but the vibe had shifted. The cemetery felt different now. The headstones seemed closer, like the path had shrunk. The wind picked up, but the leaves didn't move. It was like this bad energy hanging in the air, feeding off our freak-out. We were practically speed walking when we heard voices. Coming from the same direction those things had appeared. This time it was a group, 4 or 5 people. Flashlights flickering, gear clanking, cameras, excited chatter. I ducked behind a tombstone, yanked Jess down with me and whispered, "Ghost hunters." Her eyes went wide. Then we heard it. Their TV show narration voices. Signs of manifestation, concentrated energy, elevated paranormal activity. They set up tripods, laid sensors on the ground, and started creeping around, talking low like they were trying to summon something. I could have stayed quiet, could have let it go. But my knee was throbbing. I was still pissed about those figures, and honestly, I just had to mess with these people who were taking this way too seriously. I looked at Jess. She read my mind from my smirk, rolled her eyes but didn't stop me. Actually, she backed up to give me room. I grabbed a rock and pegged a bush near them. One guy jumped, another stumbled back. Before they recovered, I scraped my house key down a marble cross. Screech. A sensor beeped. They all looked at each other like they'd just witnessed the real deal. I hid behind a bigger headstone, tossed a dead flower toward their tripod, and growled, "Get out!" in the deepest voice I could fake. Chaos erupted. One guy knocked over a camera. Another tripped over a grave, nearly face-planting. Their screams echoed like the cemetery itself was laughing. I was dying trying not to bust out laughing. Then the mood flipped. A second later, when I was about to step out and gloat, the air changed. That heavy, suffocating feeling like something in the dark didn't like us being there. It wasn't funny anymore. A cold dread crawled up my spine. And for a second I was frozen, trembling behind that headstone, not understanding why. The ghost hunters' lights were already fading toward the gate, their screams mixing with panicked footsteps. Jess appeared on the other side of the tombstone, staring at me with this, "What the hell did you just do?" look, half laughing, half terrified. "Happy with your little prank?" she hissed. I grinned, but before I could answer, behind her, between two old headstones, was back. One of those figures. Closer this time, and wrong. It wasn't human anymore. The darkness made it hard to see, but the outline was distorted. Like a TV with bad reception, flickering, unstable. Its limbs were too long, its neck twisted at an angle that shouldn't exist. It wasn't just watching. It was coming. I yanked Jess's arm, and we booked it through the rows of graves, past the cracked cross in the center. Everything around us felt darker, thicker. Our footsteps echoed like the ground was hollow. And even though I didn't look back, I knew it was following. Not chasing, just keeping pace, like it was waiting for us to stumble again. When we hit the gate, we found it chained shut. Rusty padlock, old but solid. I didn't hesitate, climbed that fence again, knees screaming, heart pounding. Jess slipped halfway up. I grabbed her arm and hauled her over. The second she cleared the top, we heard a thud, like something heavy had dropped right behind us. I didn't dare look. We hit the sidewalk on the other side, gasping. I got up, hands scraped, adrenaline surging. Jess was pale, eyes huge, staring back at the gate. But there was nothing. No figures, no sounds. Just the cemetery, silent again, with its still shadows and that oppressive quiet. We walked home in silence. The streets felt too empty, and every corner made me jump like something might still be tailing us. When we got inside, we locked the door, killed the lights, and went straight to bed. Sleep? Impossible. All I could see was that flickering shape in the dark, the way it looked at me, like it knew who I was. The next day I told Jess the whole thing again, trying to play it cool. She laughed, said it was just fear messing with me. But I saw it in her eyes. She knew something had marked that night. It wasn't just the sprint or the ghost hunter's screams. It was that moment when the joke turned, and whatever was in that cemetery stopped being a game. For days, I wondered if it was real, or if the beer had fried my brain. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that wrong silhouette, the way it moved, like part of it had stuck to me. We never took that shortcut again, not even in daylight. Jess didn't either. We changed our whole route to work, even if it took longer. Some things aren't worth risking. And sometimes, when I'm alone on the couch, TV on low, I feel that same energy in the air, that sense of being watched, like something got curious about us and wants to keep watching from the shadows. Here's the thing. I'll never underestimate a quiet cemetery at night again, because that silence, sometimes it's hiding things that don't want to be seen. Weird, huh? But not every cemetery story ends with laughter. Sometimes what starts as an innocent visit can follow you home. Like in the next one, where asking the wrong question in the wrong place opened the door to the supernatural. You don't realize you're not alone until the silence starts acting weird. And that's exactly what made me freeze mid-step in that museum hallway, the unshakable feeling that someone was standing right behind me. But when I turned, nothing. just that thick, still air and then a kind of silence that felt like it was staring back. This all went down one of those random weekends where you're desperate to break the routine. Me and Jess, my ex, though back then we were still together, decided to check out this old mining museum and the historic cemetery next door, way out in the backcountry of some forgotten corner of the Appalachians. She's always been into that kind of thing. Crumbling history, places with stories carved into the walls. Me? Honestly? I was just there for the company. The museum was built into an abandoned mine, all preserved tunnels and rusted tools from back when men dug ore out by hand. Right at the entrance, they handed us hard hats and flashlights. Our guide, a woman in her 50s, too cheerful, warned us that some folks got the heebie-jeebies down there. She laughed it off, blamed the stale air. But the way she said it, like she was reciting a script she didn't quite believe in. Those tunnels were tight, the shadows twisting every time my flashlight shook. More than once I swore someone was right behind me. Not Jess, something else, a presence. And it wasn't just physical, it was emotional. A weight in the air, like I'd stepped somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. With every step, the feeling of being watched got heavier. And it wasn't paranoia. There was this cold prickle up my spine every time I stopped. And the footsteps behind me kept going. After the museum, we wandered into the historic cemetery out back. The guide mentioned it was full of old miners' graves, some who died right there in the tunnels, buried alive or choked on dust. It was eerie beautiful. Gnarled trees, weathered headstones, statues draped in moss. But the vibe, thick, like time had pooled in that place and never drained out. Jess stopped to take photos while I zoned out, reading the names and dates. That's when I had my brilliant idea. Grinning, I called out, "Hey, if anyone's here, you're welcome to tag along. Just don't trash the place, okay?" Jess shot me a look, half amused, half serious. "Why you gotta go inviting stuff like that?" I shrugged. Just a joke. The ride home was smooth. But that night, things got weird. First, Jess noticed the hallway light. The one we definitely turned off was back on. Then the kitchen cabinet door was wide open. I tried to rationalize it. Drafts, bad wiring, whatever. But deep down, I knew. Around 3 a.m., I jolted awake, suffocating. Felt like someone was sitting on my chest. I couldn't see a thing, but the air was wrong. Heavy, like wet wool. I tried to move. Nothing. Classic sleep paralysis. Except for the shadow in the corner of the room. Not a trick of the light. Not my imagination. It was watching me. I thrashed until I could scream, bolted upright, and the second I flipped on the lamp, it was gone. The next night was worse. I was in the shower when I heard footsteps in the hall. Slow. Dragging. I yanked the curtain back, wrapped a towel around me, and found nothing. Just the lights flickering like a power surge. But the bathroom mirror, fogged up, with fingerprints on the inside, like someone had pressed their hand against the glass from the other side. I stopped sleeping. Every creak, every whisper of wind had me up, prowling the house. It wasn't just fear, it was this pressure, like something negative had latched onto me. Even the silence at night felt alive. I'd lock every door, check them twice, 3 times. Didn't matter. The problem wasn't physical security. It was something I'd brought home. Jess tried to help at first, but then she started pulling away. Said she was scared, not of it, but of me, of how obsessed I'd gotten, and yeah, I was. I set up cameras, scoured the footage, mostly nothing, until one clip. 3 a.m., the hallway. A glass jar falls off the shelf by itself. No wind, no one near it, just drops. Then the light flickers twice and dies. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. Took to the couch, all the lights blazing. The nightmares started, always the mine, the tunnels, a hooded figure trailing me. I'd wake up drenched in cold sweat, certain it wasn't just a dream. Like something was pulling me back there, like whatever I'd invited had decided my house was its house now. One day I talked to an old-timer who worked at the museum. He said plenty of visitors had odd experiences. Told me that cemetery was full of unmarked graves. Folks who died alone, forgotten. Some in bad ways. Never buried right. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Some things just want to be remembered. Others, they just want peace. When you call out, you don't know what's answering." After that, my whole relationship with places like that changed. I didn't stop visiting. I just stopped messing around. No more jokes. No more open-ended questions. No more treating old graves like Instagram backdrops. I learned to respect what I don't understand, to respect the silence in those places, and to know not every echo comes from the wind. These days, if I hear a noise in the house, I can tell the difference between a pipe groaning and something that shouldn't be there. I don't fight it anymore. I just respect it. Light a candle, crack a window, wait it out. Because some things don't belong here. And when you go poking at that line, you'd better be ready for what follows you back. I don't know what came home with me that day. Maybe it was just waiting for an invitation, and I was stupid enough to hold the door open. Now, I live quieter, more careful, and with a hell of a lot more respect. Because I've learned, some questions should never be asked, especially when the answer might just move in with you. Creepy, isn't it? The idea of a cemetery presence following you home is terrifying, and sometimes what you run into in those places isn't even a ghost. It's something far more bizarre and disturbing, like in the story you're about to hear. But before we get to it, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying these stories. So hit that like button to let YouTube know you want more creepy content, and so you never miss another horror story. You ever have one of those things you try to bury so deep in your memory that you convince yourself it never even happened? Yeah. There's this one night that still claws its way back to me, no matter how many times I think I've moved on. A night where, if I could go back, I'd do everything differently. But in the moment, you just react. You just run. You just try to make it out alive. And sometimes, that's more than enough. Back then I was 18. Right in that phase where everything revolves around freedom. College, friends, relationships, plans for the future. I was the only one in my friend group with a car. This beat-up sedan my uncle sold me for next to nothing. That thing was our lifeline. Parties, rides, aimless drives at 2 a.m. And most of all, my boyfriend treating it like it was his. He'd take it all the time, never even asking. And I let him, because in my head, that's just what you did when you were part of a we. That night, I was in my community college class. Night course. Developmental psychology, I think. I remember because the professor showed this old video of kids behaving in the weirdest ways, and I sat there thinking about how humans are just built strange from the start. Class ended around 9:45. I headed straight to the parking lot like always, phone already in hand to text that I was there. But my phone was dead. Battery had died mid-lecture, and of course I'd left my charger in the car. Only the car wasn't there. I stood there for a solid few minutes, staring at the empty space like my glare alone could summon it back. At first I figured he was just running late. Maybe he'd stopped for gas or was circling around and would pull up any second. So I waited, paced in loops around the lot, glancing at my busted wristwatch like it'd magically start working. The temperature had dropped, and the cold wind sent dry leaves skittering across the asphalt. I was alone, not a soul left in that corner of campus. With every passing minute, my irritation grew. I tried calling from a payphone. Yes, one of those ancient things still existed, but no one picked up. After 40 minutes, I realized I was out of options. Sleep on the sidewalk or walk the 5 miles to Karen's place, my best friend who lived with her grandma. I'd crashed there before, not ideal, but it was all I had. The town was small, but some stretches got real deserted at night. I knew the route cut through this massive old cemetery, the kind with a rusted iron gate and headstones so ancient the engravings had worn smooth. I hated walking past it even in daylight, but right then, it was the fastest way. 5 miles didn't sound like much until you're lugging a backpack in the dark, fury simmering under your skin. Every step feeling like a mile itself. By the time I reached the cemetery street, my heart was already pounding. The streetlights thinned out like the neighborhood itself was avoiding that patch of land. The gate stood slightly ajar, as if someone had slipped inside and forgotten to close it. I picked up my pace, eyes locked straight ahead, pretending the gravestones weren't there. pretending it was just me, the sidewalk, and the sound of my own hurried footsteps. That's when I saw him. Behind a white marble headstone, dead center in the cemetery, stood a figure. A man. At first, I thought he was just some drunk or a homeless guy looking for shelter. But when I looked closer, my stomach dropped. He was standing, stooped slightly, but completely still. The weirdest part? He wasn't wearing pants, just a long, tattered shirt that hung past his thighs. Bare feet, caked in dirt. His skin was pale, almost blue, like it was catching the faint moonlight and glowing. I froze. My body refused to move, but my mind was screaming, "Run!" He stayed there, motionless, watching me. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but I felt his gaze, like it was piercing through me. A spiritual weight, heavy and wrong. The kind of negative energy that makes your skin crawl for no logical reason. Somehow, my legs unlocked. I ran, like something was right behind me. Didn't look back, just heard my heartbeat in my ears, my breath tearing through my chest. Every shadow felt like a trap, every tree like a figure waiting to grab me. When I finally reached Karen's, I pounded on the gate so hard her grandma came running, startled. I stumbled inside without a word, face pale, legs shaking. Karen stared at me, confused. But all I could choke out was that I needed water and a place to sit. The truth? I didn't want anyone to know. Not her, not my mom, not the cops. For some reason I still don't understand. I was ashamed. Ashamed of seeing it, of feeling that terror, of sprinting like a maniac over some half-naked guy in a cemetery. It was too surreal, too ridiculous, and yet too terrifying to process. I didn't talk about it for years, buried it deep with all the other things we pretend don't exist. After that night, I broke up with my boyfriend, not because of the car, though that was the last straw, but because I realized he didn't care. He never even apologized for leaving me stranded, just shrugged and said, "Forgot." Like it was normal to forget your girlfriend alone in an empty parking lot at night with a dead phone. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what came after. Over time, that scene started haunting me in new ways. Strange dreams. The feeling of being watched, even alone in my room. Whispers in the dead of night. A cold that came out of nowhere. I tried telling myself it was just trauma, my brain stuck in fight-or-flight mode. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. That man, or whatever he was, wasn't some random lunatic trespassing in a cemetery. It was something else. Something carrying an energy that felt like it had latched onto me. Years later, I went back during the day. Walked through that gate with the sun high overhead, trying to prove to myself it was just another place. But when I got close to that headstone, the one where I'd seen him, my hands started sweating. I inched forward, heart racing, and noticed something carved into the stone. A name worn smooth by time. And a death date, 1967. The strangest part? Next to the headstone was a shattered glass bottle and a scrap of fabric that looked like it came from a shirt, just sitting there, like someone or something had left it recently, like he had been back. I walked away without looking back. To this day, I don't know exactly what I saw, whether it was supernatural, some kind of spiritual manifestation, or just a person who'd lost their mind. But I know what I felt, and I know it left a mark on me in a way that doesn't fade. There are still nights I dream about that figure standing between the graves. Days when I walk down empty streets and my body reacts like I'm back on that dark sidewalk. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that some places hold more than memories. They hold presences. And sometimes just crossing paths with one is enough to change you forever. That was insane. What did you think of the story? On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate it? Let me know in the comments. They say everyone has their own strange way of dealing with death. For us, what started as a way to kill time turned into something like a ritual. Visiting old cemeteries, photographing headstones, tracing the faded letters of inscriptions with our fingers, and imagining the stories behind forgotten names. My mom always said it was our way of honoring those who came before us. At first, I thought the whole thing was morbid. But once you get used to the silence, to that damp smell of ancient earth, something shifts. Time moves differently in those places. And the weirdest part? No matter how empty the cemetery was, we never felt alone there. At first it was just curiosity. Victorian-era cemeteries, especially the rural ones in New England, have a beauty that borders on surreal. Moss-covered tombstones, stone angels with broken wings, inscriptions worn smooth by decades of rain and wind. Every visit felt like stepping into another era. We'd walk slowly, cameras dangling around our necks, speaking in hushed tones, as if the place itself demanded reverence. We never saw another soul. Just me, my mom, and the crunch of dead leaves under our boots. But then there was that visit. The one that broke the pattern. The one that changed everything. A family friend had died tragically. A car crash on a slick, winding road outside of Vermont. Her name was Margaret, and she'd been my mom's best friend since high school, the kind who'd call just to laugh about stupid inside jokes. The news hit on a Sunday, the funeral was Tuesday. We couldn't make it. Too far, too sudden. So a few weeks later, my mom decided we'd visit the cemetery where she was buried. A late tribute, she said. A way to say goodbye. We left early. The windshield streaked with mist. The sky that flat gunmetal gray you only get in November. On the drive, my mom told stories about Margaret. How they'd sneak out to diners at 2 a.m. How Margaret always ordered cherry pie a la mode even though she was lactose intolerant. I listened, staring out the window, my chest tight with this weird, creeping dread. It had started the second we pulled out of the driveway. A pressure, like someone was watching us, like we were being followed. We arrived around 10. The cemetery was on the outskirts of a tiny town, ringed by towering oaks and stone walls choked with ivy. One of those old, overgrown places where the headstones were elaborate, whole families buried under the same carved angels and obelisks. A low fog hugged the ground, and the air smelled like wet earth and rotting leaves. That feeling of being watched, it tripled. Not paranoia, not imagination. The place breathed, and with every step it felt like we were disturbing something that didn't want to be disturbed. We brought flowers and spent a long time searching for Margaret's grave. When we finally found it, my mom knelt, silent. I stood back, arms crossed, scanning the rows of stones. That's when I noticed the grave beside hers. It was a tall, dark granite marker, the Holloway family plot. Father, mother, 2 children, all with the same last name, all dead within days of each other. A small plaque at the base said they'd perished in a house fire, one winter night in 1923. The whole family, gone in an instant. That's when everything stopped. The wind died. The birds went silent. Even the leaves in the trees seemed frozen mid-fall. It was like someone had hit pause on the world. I turned to my mom. She was statue still, staring at the Holloway plot. I opened my mouth to ask if she was okay, but before I could speak, a hummingbird appeared, out of nowhere, hovering in slow motion like it was moving through syrup. It landed right on top of the mother's headstone, which was already impossible. Hummingbirds don't live in Vermont, not in late autumn. And this one, it glowed. Not like sunlight hitting its wings, but like it was lit from inside, defying physics. A chill ran up my spine. The air thickened. Something else was there with us. Then the hummingbird fluttered its wings, once, and changed. Right in front of us. It unfolded into a butterfly, huge, with iridescent blue wings that shimmered like stained glass. I blinked, looked away, looked back. It was still there. No trick of the light, no hallucination. My pulse hammered in my throat. Before I could even process it, the butterfly started shifting again. Its wings turned white. Its body stretched, elongated, until it wasn't a butterfly anymore. It was a moth. Snow white, drifting in slow circles above the graves, like it was dancing. And then, it vanished. No fade out, no fluttering away. One second it was there, the next it was gone, like it had never existed. I looked at my mom. Her mouth was open, her eyes locked on the empty air. We stood there, frozen, until she whispered, "You saw that too, right?" I could only nod. Then, voice shaking, she said, "First the hummingbird, then the butterfly, then the moth." My stomach dropped. I hadn't said a word, but she'd seen the exact same sequence, the same impossible transformation. It was like the whole thing had been staged, just for us. We started comparing notes, the color of the wings, the way the light bent around them, how long the moth had hovered before disappearing. Every detail matched. It was like we'd witnessed a performance, one meant only for us. We tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was the fog playing tricks. A hummingbird and a butterfly just happened to pass by at the same time. But none of it stuck. This wasn't logic. This was something bigger. A supernatural experience we had no choice but to accept. The strangest part? After that day, the cemeteries changed for us. The visits were never the same. That oppressive, creeping dread was replaced by something different. Like we'd been marked. Like the dead now recognized us. I spent days turning it over in my mind. Sometimes I still do. Was the hummingbird Margaret? A spirit from the Holloway family? Or something else entirely? Something from the other side trying to tell us death isn't as final as we think. That feeling of being watched never left. But now, it's quieter, calmer. Like a silent presence walking beside me saying, "You saw, and now you know." Ever since then, whenever I see a white moth, I stop. I watch. I wait. Because maybe, just maybe, it has something to say. And that's how what seemed like a simple visit turned into something logic just can't explain. If you're still here, comment the word hummingbird, so I know you stuck it out through every eerie detail of these stories. And don't forget to subscribe, because I'm always bringing you stories that make us question what really exists beyond what we can see. Oh, and hit the like button too, because that's how I know we're together on this journey into the unknown. There's another video right here that connects to this one. Click it and keep going with me over there.